The quiet town of Creston was not known for much, except perhaps its annual apple festival and the old lighthouse on the coast. But on this particular evening, as the sky was painting itself with the colors of dusk, something extraordinary was about to happen. Mark Thompson, a mechanic with a passion for vintage cars and a life as predictable as the tides, was closing up his shop when a light brighter than any he'd ever seen pierced through the fading daylight. A sleek, silver ship descended from the sky, landing with an almost silent grace in the empty lot beside his garage. Mark stood there, wrench in hand, mouth agape, as the ship's door hissed open. Out stepped a figure so unlike anything he'd seen in his quiet, human-centric world. "Good evening, human," the figure greeted. She was tall, with skin that shimmered like the moonlit ocean, and eyes that glowed in ethereal blue. Her attire was like nothing from Earth, flowing and luminescent, with symbols that seemed to move. Hi?" Mark managed, his voice a mix of awe and confusion. "Are you lost?" The alien chuckled, a sound that was both melodious and slightly unnerving in its unfamiliarity. "Not lost, but indeed seeking. My name is Valara, Princess from Eloria. I need assistance with my vessel." Mark, still processing the reality of an alien princess standing before him, scratched his head. "Your ship's broken? Well, I'm a mechanic. Let's see what we can do." As they walked to the ship, Valara explained her mission. "On Eloria, we value compatibility over status when choosing mates. I've come to Earth to find someone who can bring new perspectives to our society. My ship, however, seems to have encountered an issue with its atmospheric converter." "I can probably help with that," Mark said, leading her into his garage where he kept his tools. The contrast between his cluttered workspace and Valara's sophisticated technology was stark, but Mark's curiosity was piqued. He began examining the ship's engine, which was unlike any he'd seen. "This is going to be interesting," he muttered, poking at what appeared to be the power source. Valara watched him work, her eyes reflecting a mix of fascination and amusement. "Your hands are so intricate, unlike ours," she observed, holding up her own, longer fingers. "How do you manage such precision?" "It's all about patience and the right tool," Mark replied, grinning. He spent the next few hours tinkering, Valara occasionally offering insights into the ship's mechanics, which baffled and educated Mark in equal measure. As the night deepened, they shared stories. Valara spoke of Eloria's vast oceans and cities built beneath the waves, while Mark talked about his love for fixing things, his small town, and his dreams of seeing more of the world, or in this case, worlds. "You fix things with such care," Valara noted, her voice soft. "It's not just about mechanics, is it? It's about connection?" Mark paused, looking up from his work. "Yeah, I guess it is. Everything's connected, one way or another." By the time the engine hummed back to life, a connection had indeed formed between them. Valara looked at Mark with something akin to wonder. "You've done more than fix my ship, Mark Thompson. You've shown me something extraordinary about humanity." Mark, feeling a mix of pride and an odd warmth, smiled. "Well, I guess I should get used to saying, 'I fixed an alien ship today.'" Valara laughed, the sound echoing in the garage. "Perhaps you'll fix more than just ships in the future." As they stepped out into the night, Mark knew his life was about to change. But for now, he was just a mechanic who had made an unexpected friend under the stars. The morning after Valara's arrival, Mark found himself in a peculiar situation. He had an alien princess in his kitchen, sipping coffee and watching him cook scrambled eggs with a look of intense curiosity. "You humans consume this daily?" Valara asked, her eyes wide as she observed the steam rising from her mug. "Most of us, yeah. Coffee's like fuel for the day," Mark chuckled, flipping the eggs. "You like it?" "It's intriguing, like a mild shock to the system," she replied, her nose wrinkling slightly at the strong aroma. After breakfast, they returned to Mark's garage. The ship was now operational, but Valara seemed in no rush to leave. "I'd like to learn more about your machinery," she said, her interest clearly not just in her ship. Mark grinned, pulling out an old motorbike he'd been restoring. "This is from the 60s. It's all about the mechanics, the feel of the road. Want to help me finish her up?" Valara's eyes lit up. I would be honored to engage in this restoration with you. Together, they worked on the bike. Mark explained each part, showing her how to tighten bolts, check oil levels, and even the art of polishing chrome. Vilara, with her slender, long fingers, was surprisingly adept at the delicate work. You have a knack for this, Mark complimented, watching her carefully polish the bike's fender. It's not unlike some of our technology back on Aloria, she mused, but there's a certain tactile satisfaction here. As they worked, their conversation flowed freely. Villar asked about human life, the concept of work and leisure. Mark found himself explaining everything from the internet to why he chose to live in Creston. Why do you stay here when there's so much more out there? Villar asked, her gaze piercing. Mark paused, wiping his hands on a rag. Guess I like knowing everyone, having a place where I fit. But meeting you, it's like a window has opened, you know. Villara nodded, her expression thoughtful. I understand this feeling. My life has been structured, with every moment planned. Here, with you, it's spontaneous, unpredictable. By afternoon, the bike gleamed under the garage lights, ready for a test drive. Want to ride it? Mark asked, half joking. But Vilara's eager nod surprised him. They ventured out, Vilara behind Mark, her arms around his waist as they felt the wind rush past. Her laughter was infectious as they sped through the countryside, the bike roaring beneath them. This is exhilarating, Vilara exclaimed as they slowed down near a scenic overlook. Mark turned to look at her hair now tousled by the wind, her eyes bright with excitement. You're not what I expected from an alien princess. And you, Mark Thompson, are not what I expected from a human mate, she replied, her tone teasing yet sincere. They spent the rest of the day exploring local spots, Vilara absorbing the culture, and Mark enjoying showing off his world. As they returned to the garage, Mark realized he was already looking forward to showing her more, teaching her more, and learning from her in return. You're not leaving today, are you? Mark asked as they parked the bike. Vilara shook her head. Not today. There's much more to learn here. Mark smiled, a warmth spreading through him. Then let's make the most of it. The day after their motorcycle adventure, Mark and Vilara decided to dive into a cultural exchange. Mark proposed they spend the day at the local park where the annual Creston Cultural Festival was taking place. It's the perfect place to see a bit of everything about human life here, he explained as they made their way there. The festival was a vibrant display of local crafts, food stalls, music, and dance. Vilara's eyes sparkled with delight at the cacophony of sounds and colors, so different from the serene aquatic landscapes of Eloria. This is your culture? She asked, watching children running around with painted faces. A slice of it, Mark replied. It's about community, coming together, celebrating what we have. First, they visited the food stalls. Mark introduced Valera to various human foods, from the spicy local chili to sweet apple pies. Vilara was cautious but curious, her expressions a mix of surprise and enjoyment as she tried each dish. This is called taco, she asked, holding a colorful, messy taco with careful intrigue. Yeah, one of my favorites. Just watch out for the salsa, it's got a kick, Mark warned with a grin. Vilara took a bite, her eyes widening. It's like a small, delicious explosion in my mouth, she exclaimed, making Mark laugh. Next, they moved to an area where local musicians were playing. Mark, knowing Vilara's interest in human arts, encouraged her to dance. This is a folk dance from here. Want to try? Vilara, with her grace, followed Mark's lead, her movements adapting to the rhythm, creating a spectacle that drew eyes from all around. Your dance is so grounded. It's like you're connecting with the earth itself, she observed, breathless from the dance. Later, they visited a booth where artisans were demonstrating pottery. This is how we make things by hand, Mark said, showing her how to spin the wheel. Vilara was fascinated, her hands shaping the clay under Mark's guidance. It's like you're giving life to the earth, she marveled, watching as her pot took form. The day was filled with such moments, Mark teaching Vilara about human games, like tossing horseshoes, where her aim surprised both of them, and Vilara sharing stories of Alorian festivals, which involved synchronized swimming through underwater cities. As the sun began to set, they sat on a hill overlooking the festival, sharing a local cider. You've shown me so much, Mark. I feel like I've seen more of humanity today than in all my studies, Valera said, her voice soft with wonder. And you've shared things about Aloria I could never have imagined, like those underwater cities. I want to see them one day, Mark admitted, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Valara turned to him, her eyes reflecting the festival's lights. Would you truly wish to come to Aloria? Mark looked back at her, his expression earnest. If you'd have me, yeah. There's a whole universe out there, and I've always liked exploring new places, fixing things, learning. Vilara smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Then perhaps there's a place for you there, not just as my companion, but as an explorer, a teacher of human ways. They sat in silence for a moment, the festival's sounds a distant backdrop to their conversation. But for now, let's enjoy this, Mark said, clinking his cider bottle against hers. Indeed, Valara agreed. This is a moment I will remember, Mark Thompson. A human festival, a human friend, and a human heart. As they watched the fireworks light up the sky, both knew that this day had woven their lives together in ways neither had anticipated. The festival might end, but their journey together was just beginning. The morning after the festival, Mark woke up to the sound of birds, an unusual peace settling over him. Vilara was already up, her gaze fixed on a small bird feeding outside his window. Is this what you wake to every day? She asked without turning around. Most days, yeah. It's the simple things, Mark replied, joining her by the window. Want to see how I spend my days? Vilara nodded eagerly, and they set out for a day of ordinary human life. First stop was the local bakery where Mark bought fresh bread. This is our breakfast, he said, handing her a piece. Vilara bit into it, her face lighting up. So different from the synthesized food we have. There's warmth here. They then headed to the town square, where a farmer's market was in full swing. This is where we get our food straight from the growers, Mark explained, leading her through stalls of fruits, vegetables, and homemade jams. Vilara, intrigued, asked about each product. And what do you do with this? She questioned, holding up a radish. It's good in salads or you can pickle it, Mark told her, laughing at her puzzled look. Here, try it. They shared samples, Valara's taste buds being introduced to the earthy, sometimes sharp flavors of earth. Next, they visited Mark's friend Jim, who was an artist. I thought you'd like to see how we create art here, Mark said as they entered the small studio. Jim was painting, his canvas a burst of colors depicting the local landscape. Mark, who's your friend? Jim asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Valara, she's from out of town, Mark said, winking at her. Valara watched Jim work, her interest piqued. May I try? She asked, her voice tinged with excitement. Jim handed her a brush, and with Mark's encouragement, she added strokes to a new canvas. You're quite good at this, Mark complimented, watching her blend colors in ways unfamiliar yet captivating. It's not unlike the fluid art forms we have underwater, Valara said, her concentration on the canvas. After art, they walked through the town, Mark showing her the old library, the community center where volunteers were planting a garden, and finally the school where children were playing during recess. Vilara observed with a quiet intensity. Your young learn together in such freedom, she remarked. It's how we grow. Learn from each other, Mark said, his pride in his community evident. As the day waned, they returned to Mark's house. He started preparing dinner, teaching Vilara how to make a simple pasta dish. Cooking is like art, but you eat it, he said, handing her a knife to chop herbs. Vilara, enjoying the tactile experience, chopped carefully. This is like crafting a meal for the soul, she observed, her hands moving with newfound confidence. They ate together, the conversation flowing from Earth's history to Aloria's governance. You've given me so much to think about, Mark. Your life here, it's so interconnected, Vilara said as they cleared the table. Mark smiled, feeling a connection he hadn't known was missing. And you've opened my eyes to what's beyond. It's not just about what we do, but why we do it. As night fell, they sat on the porch, the stars above a reminder of Valara's home. I feel like I've lived a lifetime today, she said softly. And there's much more of life to live, Mark replied, their hands finding each other's in the dark, a silent promise of more days like this one. The next morning, Mark woke up to find Vilara already at work in his kitchen, attempting to brew coffee with an unusual alien device she had brought with her. "I thought I'd try to make something from my world for you," she said, her concentration intense as she adjusted the settings. Mark chuckled, watching her. "Well, let's see what kind of coffee an alien princess can make." The result was a surprisingly aromatic brew, unlike anything Mark had tasted but not unpleasant. "It's different," he admitted, sipping it. "But I like it. It's like you. Unexpected, but good." Vilara beamed. "I'm glad. Now, Mark, I have a proposal for you. How would you feel about visiting Aloria?" Mark nearly choked on his coffee. "You mean, like space travel?" "Yes, I want you to see my world, to understand where I come from, as I've experienced yours." The idea was daunting, yet thrilling. "I've never been off-planet before," Mark said, his voice a mix of excitement and nervousness. "But if you're with me, I'm in." They spent the morning preparing. Vilara explained the basics of Valorian customs and what Mark should expect. "Our society values harmony with nature, especially our oceans. It's quite different from here." Mark, already packing a small bag, asked, "What do I need to know? Like, do I need to bring anything special?" "Just your open mind and curiosity," she replied with a smile. "Though perhaps some of your tools. You might find our technology fascinating." They boarded her ship, which now hummed with the power Mark had helped restore. As they took off, Mark watched Earth shrink below, a wave of awe washing over him. "This is incredible," he murmured, his face pressed against the window. "Wait until you see Aloria," Vilara said, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Upon arrival, Aloria was a sight to behold. Vast, shimmering oceans with floating cities that looked like jewels in the sunlight. "Welcome to my home," Vilara said, pride in her voice. They first visited the capital, a city partially submerged in crystal-clear water. Mark was in awe of the architecture, buildings that seemed to grow from the ocean floor. "How do you live like this?" he asked, watching fish swim by windows. "We live with the water, not against it. Here, everyone contributes to the balance of life and technology," Vilara explained. She introduced him to her friends who were curious about the human mechanic. "Mark, this is Lorana. She designs our aquatic vehicles." Lorana, fascinated, asked, "You work with machines on your world? Perhaps you can help us with our newest project." Mark, eager to be useful, spent the afternoon with Lorana, learning about their tech, which was both advanced and harmoniously integrated with nature. They tinkered with a new propulsion system, Mark's human perspective adding fresh insights. That evening, Vilara took him to a place where they could swim among bioluminescent flora, the water glowing around them. "This is how we celebrate life," she said, guiding him through the water. "It's like swimming in the stars," Mark gasped, his eyes wide with wonder. As they floated back to the surface, Vilara looked at him, her expression serious yet hopeful. "Mark, I brought you here not just to show you Aloria, but because I want you to be a part of it. With me." Mark, still catching his breath, nodded. "I want that too, Vilara. This place, it's not just beautiful. It feels like home could be here too." Under the alien sky, they shared a moment that felt like the beginning of something extraordinary, not just for them, but for the blending of their worlds. After days of exploring Aloria, Mark and Vilara found themselves back on Earth, the novelty of their interstellar journey still fresh in their minds. In Mark's cozy living room, they sat close, discussing the vast differences and similarities between their worlds. "I'm still processing the underwater city," Mark said, shaking his head in amazement. "And those fish, they're like nothing we have here. And your world, Mark, it's so vibrant in its chaos," Vilara replied, her eyes reflecting the fading light from the window. "I've never felt so alive as when I'm with you here." Their conversation turned to softer, more intimate topics as the night deepened. Mark, feeling the warmth of Vilara's presence, leaned in, his voice low. "I've never met anyone like you. You make me see everything differently." Vilara placed her hand on his, her touch gentle but electric. "And you've shown me what love might feel like among humans." Their lips met in a kiss that was tentative at first, exploring each other's uniqueness. The kiss deepened, a mix of curiosity and passion, as if each was trying to understand the other's essence through this shared moment. As they pulled apart, Valara's breath was quick, her eyes searching his. "This is new," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and vulnerability. Mark, sensing her intrigue, smiled reassuringly. "It's supposed to feel like that, like you're discovering something incredible." They moved to his bedroom, the air charged with anticipation. Valara, now more confident, initiated another kiss, her hands exploring the contours of Mark's face. "Show me more," she murmured, her curiosity and desire intertwining. Mark guided her gently onto the bed, their connection growing with every touch. They undressed slowly, each moment a discovery. "It's about connection," Mark whispered, his hands tracing her alien form. "So different, yet so beautiful." As they lay together, Valara positioned herself above Mark, her eyes locked with his. "Is this what humans call love?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with the newness of the sensation. "It's part of it," Mark replied, his voice soft, his hands on her hips to guide her gently. "It's about sharing, about feeling close." Valara moved, her body trembling with pleasure as she experienced human intimacy for the first time. Her movements were slow, learning, matching Mark's rhythm, each motion bringing them closer, both physically and emotionally. The experience was unlike anything Mark had known, her alien physiology adding a layer of wonder to their lovemaking. He watched her face a canvas of emotion, from surprise to ecstasy, her body responding to his in ways that were both familiar and otherworldly. Afterward, they lay in silence, the only sound their synchronized breathing. Valara, her head on Mark's chest, spoke first. "That was beyond what I imagined. I feel connected, not just physically, but in my spirit." Mark kissed her forehead, his heart full. "That's love, Valara. It's about finding someone who feels like home, no matter where you are." They talked into the night, sharing dreams of a future together, a blend of two worlds. Valara spoke of integrating human customs into Eloria, while Mark imagined designs for machinery that could work underwater on her planet. "This could be the start of something incredible," Valara said, her voice hopeful. "It already is," Mark replied, tightening his embrace, both of them looking forward to whatever this extraordinary relationship would bring. The morning after their intimate night, Mark and Valara were awakened by the sound of a ship landing outside. Valara immediately recognized it as her mother's royal vessel. "My mother is here," she said with a mix of excitement and apprehension, quickly dressing. Mark, feeling a rush of nerves, followed suit. "Should I be worried?" he asked, trying to keep his tone light. "Only if you fear being judged by the Queen of Eloria," Valara teased, but her eyes showed genuine concern. "She's here to meet you, to see if you're worthy of joining our family." They greeted the Queen Dara at the door. Her presence was regal, her eyes sharp, assessing Mark from head to toe. "So you are the human who has captured my daughter's interest?" she stated, her voice commanding yet curious. "Yes, ma'am," Mark replied, bowing slightly, unsure of Elorian customs for greeting royalty. Dara invited them both into Mark's home, which suddenly felt too small for such grand company. Over tea, Mark showed her the modifications he had made to Valara's ship, explaining his passion for mechanics. "I believe in fixing things, making them better," he said, hoping to impress. Dara listened, her expression unreadable. "And what of your intentions with my daughter? She is not just any Elorian, she is future." "I love her," Mark said simply, his voice steady. "I want to learn from each other, grow together. I'm not here to change her or Eloria, but to add to it, share what I can." This seemed to resonate with Dara, who nodded slowly. "Love is rare, especially across worlds, but it is not the only factor. Valara, you must understand the implications of bringing a human into our society." Valara took her mother's hand. "I know, Mother, but Mark has shown me there's much to learn from Earth. He's more than a mate. He's a bridge between our worlds." Dara then turned to Mark. "You would leave your world, your life, for my daughter?" "Life isn't just about where you are, but who you're with," Mark answered, his resolve clear. I've seen enough of Eloria to know it's where I want to be, with Valara. Dara looked between them, her stern facade softening. Very well, but there will be challenges. You must prove yourself, not just to me, but to our people. Mark accepted the challenge with a nod. I'm ready to work for it. They spent the day together, with Mark showing Dara more of human life, from local crafts to the simplicity of a walk in the park. Dara watched, her curiosity piqued by the mundane yet meaningful aspects of human existence. In the evening, as they prepared dinner, Mark and Vilara cooked together, explaining each dish to Dara. This is how we share love through food, Vilara said, handing her mother a plate. Dara tasted the meal, her expression one of pleasant surprise. There is beauty in this simplicity, she admitted. As night fell, Dara spoke to Mark privately. My daughter has chosen you, and I see why. But remember, to be with her, you must not only love her, but respect and adapt to our ways. I understand, Mark said earnestly. I want to learn, to contribute, not just take. Dara seemed satisfied. Then you have my blessing, conditionally. Prove yourself in Eloria, and you will be welcome in our family. With this, a weight lifted from Mark's shoulders. But the challenge was clear. He and Vilara sat together after Dara left, discussing what life in Eloria would truly entail. We'll make it work, Mark said, his hand finding hers. We will, Vilara agreed, her eyes shining with determination and love. Together. The morning after Queen Dara's visit, Mark and Vilara sat in the quiet of his kitchen, the gravity of the upcoming decision settling between them. Mark sipped his coffee, his mind racing with thoughts of Earth, Eloria, and the life he had known versus the one he could have. I never thought I'd be choosing between planets, Mark said with a wry smile, looking at Vilara, who was gazing out the window, her expression thoughtful. And I never imagined finding love in another, Vilara replied, turning to him with a soft smile. But here we are. They had to decide if Mark would return with Vilara to Eloria, not just for a visit, but to establish a new life together. It was clear that this wasn't just about love. It was about culture, responsibility, and the unknown. What would I do there? I mean, I'm just a mechanic here, Mark pondered aloud, his voice laced with concern. You would be much more than that, Vilara assured him, taking his hand. Your skills, your perspective, they're unique. We have machines, yes, but they're adapted to our environment. You could innovate, blend our technologies with yours. Mark nodded slowly, the idea of merging human and Elorian technology sparking his interest. And what about us? Living together there. How would that work? We'd live in my home, but I want it to be ours. You'd have space to work, to learn, and to teach, and we'd be together, exploring this new life day by day, she explained, her eyes bright with possibilities. Mark thought of his life in Creston, his garage, his friends, the simple joys. I'd miss this place, he admitted, but if you're there, I think I could make anywhere home. Valara's face lit up with joy. Then let's make it our adventure. You'll see. Eloria can be just as beautiful as Earth, in different ways. They spent the day going through Mark's workshop, selecting tools he thought could be useful or adaptable for Elorian tech. Vilara watched him work, her admiration clear. You have such a way with machines, she commented as he packed a vintage torque wrench. And you have a way with people, Mark countered, smiling. I think we'll make a good team. The evening was spent with Mark calling his friends, explaining his decision. I'm moving to another planet, he laughed, the absurdity not lost on him. His friends were a mix of shocked and supportive, promising visits if space travel ever became common. As night fell, they stood outside looking at the stars. One of those is home for you, Mark said, pointing upwards. And now for you too, Vilara added, her arm around him. The next morning they prepared to leave. Mark took one last look around his home, his heart heavy yet excited. I'm ready, he said to Vilara, who was waiting by the ship. The journey back to Eloria was filled with plans. I'll need a workshop, Mark said, his mind already designing one in his head. We'll build one, Vilara promised, near our home by the water. You'll love the light there. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a small crowd, curious about the human who had won the heart of their princess. Mark, feeling out of place but emboldened by Vilara's presence, waved awkwardly. Vilara introduced him to more of her world, this time with the intention of permanence. They visited the place where Mark's workshop would be, the site already cleared, the ocean just beyond. "This will be our little piece of Earth," Mark said, imagining the space filled with his tools and projects. That night, as they lay together in Vilara's, now their home, Mark looked at her, his heart full. "I chose you, because I want to see where this goes, not just for us, but for what we can do together." Vilara kissed him, a kiss that felt like a seal on their new beginning. "And I chose you because you see the beauty in both our worlds. Together we'll make something extraordinary." As they fell asleep, the future was uncertain but filled with potential, a blend of two lives, two planets, into one shared journey.